So, I'm just gonna come out and say it. Legend of Vox Machina might be aesthetically the most pleasing, visual, stunning animation I've ever seen. Episodes 7 to 9 of the second season of the Critical Role animated series have just dropped, and Jesus, the folks over at Titmouse Animation Studio have absolutely outdone themselves this time. Today on FraudOnTheTele, we're going to be discussing the emotional story of Vex and her relationship with her father, the trials of Grog and how he must face his past and answer the question, where does his strength come from? And finally, we're going to gush over the absolutely mind-blowing art in some of these episodes and some of these scenes. You see, episode 7 begins with our party being split into two groups. Pike, Grog, and Scanlan, who end up making their way to the city of Westruun, while Keyleth, Vex, Vax, and Percy are transported to the Feywild in search of the vestige, the bow Fenthras. I thought this was a really clever little idea here. You see, many of the events in Legend of Vox Machina are reorganized from how they appear in Campaign 1 in order for the show to better flow with the 20 minutes of runtime and the overall greater narrative and story that is trying to be told here. We have to remember, guys, that these episodes were taken from hours and hours and hours of Critical Role Campaign 1 and condensed down to just a few 22-minute episodes for our animated series. For example, the events in the Feywild are based off of episodes 59 to 63 in Campaign 1, while interesting, the events that simultaneously occur in Westruun in these episodes are from episode 50. You see, that's one of the beautiful things, in my opinion, about Legend of Vox Machina. Besides its crazy art, which we're gonna get to, the show manages to find a way to tell a large, epic narrative while simultaneously building all of these small, personal stories around it. Like in these 3 episodes, there's so much side story and character development that's going on that it will almost make your head spin. We have Vex's relationship with her father, Percy's guilt at his role in the death of Vex and his tension with Vax because of this. Vax and his continuing to struggle on his understanding of his pact with the Raven Queen and what it means for him and the rest of his party and how it's drawing him away from them. While in the other group, we see Grog continue to struggle to answer where his strength comes from while he must simultaneously face a person from his past, Pike contemplating her feeling towards Scanlan, while Scanlan looks to change himself in his old ways so he can finally find love. All that, and I didn't even one time mention a dragon. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the story and some of the elements of the story that I find interesting and want to talk about, I want to take some time to really spotlight the beauty that were these Feywild scenes. Now, I've watched a lot of anime and animated content over my life. I've seen what many people say are some of the most breathtaking and beautiful animated scenes from the likes of Akira, Cyberpunk, Edgerunner, Spirited Away. Take your pick. For real though, I think the Legend of Vox Machina can hang with all of these works. Look at this scene in episode 8 for a second. Look at how the lighting affects the room, or how the shadows pass over Vex's face in this scene. This is some insane level of detail that perpetuates all of Legend of Vox Machina. Now, if you watched any of my content for season 1 of Legend of Vox Machina, you would know that I freaked out over many of the artwork in these Percy scenes and how absolutely epic they were. Welp, I think that these Feywild animated scenes might just take the cake. While venturing through the Feywild, Percy has decided to be their guide, and his unwillingness to ask for help continuously leads the group into different batches of trouble. In this scene, Vex and Keyleth accidentally inhale some spores, tripping balls, leading to some of the most absolutely breathtaking and beautiful animated scenes I think that I've ever seen. I really have to hand it to Titmouse here. They've gone above and beyond with this show. The level of detail on lighting is absolutely insane throughout so many of these scenes in this season, and this legit might be top 3 for me in terms of some of the most beautiful animations that I have ever seen. The beauty doesn't just stop with the animations though, it extends to the the actual substance of the story as well. As we mentioned earlier, Legend of Vox Machina does an amazing job of balancing multiple story threads at once, but primarily these episodes here depict two stories: the story of Vex and her quest for Fenthras and her relationship with her father, and the story of Grog's journey to find where his strength comes from while also facing some demons from his past. We see our Feywild party arrive at the elven city of Singorn in episode 8. The elves, fearing the dragons, had transported their city into the Fey realm for protection, where they now stay. This was once Vex and Vax's home. Remember that they are half elves, with their mother being human and their father being elven. This is really the primary sticking point in the twins' relationship with their father, Sildor. Sildor, you see, is a bit of a cunt. Because of his children's mixed blood, Sildor viewed them as impure and a perpetual disappointment. Something that is made even more awkward when the twins discover their new half-sister, a pure-blooded elven girl named Velora. Legend of Vox Machina captures this relationship between Vex and her father amazingly well. I love this short little flashback scene we see in episode 7 as we see the relationship between Vex and her father as a young girl. Vex bringing her father a pipe, he angrily knocks it off, breaking it. We juxtapose this scene with the present day scene of Vox Machina confronting Sildor, and we see that Vex in many ways is the same sad little girl looking for recognition that she was all those years ago. These scenes were so good, as it explains in many ways why the twins are the way that they are. When you look at their dick of a father and the way that he constantly describes the twins as burdens, and it seems as though he probably thought of them in this way really since the beginning, and it's just sad, man. The party venture forward deeper into the Feywild, Percy and Vex's relationship growing stronger as they do so, as Percy stood up for her against her dad. Eventually, they make their way to the Shademurk Bog, a land of despair and corruption ruled by a mad archfey, Sondor, who is in possession of this bow in question. Sondor is this sad, lonely, somewhat tragic figure, and it is said after a lover's betrayal, he became hateful and full of misery. The Archfey, you see, sees the brokenness in Vex, and he tries to manipulate her, telling her that he can feel this void left by her father. He can give her the approval that her father never gave her and never will, as he offers her the bow Fenthras in exchange for her heart. To which Vex breaks out of her strange trance-like state, saying that my heart belongs to another, as she attacks the Archfey. Vex's story here is a real interesting one, and one that I kind of really relate to, man. Vex has a deep wound and insecurity caused by a cold nature and a relationship from her father, and her inability to receive her approval and her affection, and how it has scarred her even now as an adult. And Sondor sees this and looks to manipulate her in a way that is really shockingly real. People who are emotional abusers try to use your biggest fears and emotional weaknesses to get to you, to manipulate you in ways that they want. They prey upon broken people and look to fill the holes that these people have, but in a disgustingly predatory way, which really is, at the end of the day, to serve their own self-interest. Sondor doesn't want to actually help Vex. He wants to claim her. He wants to own her. He wants her to remain with him forever, because in reality, he is just a sad, lonely creature who thinks that he can use and abuse people to fill the hole, the gap, the lack of love, the betrayal that he feels he has faced. It's a very real human story, one that's surprisingly relatable for an animated high fantasy adventure, but that's the awesome thing about Critical Role and Legend of Vox Machina, is its ability to weave a grand high fantasy narrative while telling these real, relatable human stories. And I think it's all the more relatable and real when, after claiming this bow, Vex decides she does not need to see her father again. She doesn't need his approval. Next, I want to touch on Grog's story, which we see develop through episodes 7 to 9. Now, Grog is an awesome character, but a character who in the grand scheme of Campaign 1 was kind of a side supporting character. It never felt like he was truly really in the spotlight for a very long extended time because of the nature of the intelligence of his character. It felt a lot of times like Grog's story was very much on the back burner compared to, well, the rest of his well-spoken party members. So you can see why then I would be happy when it is Grog's time to shine in the animated series. We pick up where we left off last, Grog having lost control of himself with his cursed blade, and ran the blade through his best friend Pike's stomach. In the chaos of Keyleth's plane shift spell, Grog, Pike, and Scanlan have ended up on their own somewhere outside the city of Westron. Pike, gushing blood, begs Grog to get rid of the weapon as she heals herself. Grog, realizing that this blade could destroy everyone he cares about, he begins to repeatedly bash the sword against a rock until finally he breaks it in two. Rivers of blood erupting from the blade. Grog later coming back to consciousness, where he is shocked to find that all of his muscles, his raw brute strength, has been sapped from him. At first, I really just thought this was a funny bit, that something that the show was going with. Remember early on in the season, Grog in Vasselheim was challenged by the monk Earthbreaker Grun to find where his strength truly comes from. This challenge turned from, well, a figurative one to quite the literal one now, as Grog actually has no strength and feels that he is useless to the party and his friends. A little on the nose here from our writers, but it really does get pretty good once we hit episode 9. You see, we talked about this in our last Legend of Vox Machina video, but the show does this really awesome thing where they give us glimpses into the backstories of our characters that gives the audience more clarity on the struggles that they are currently facing. Episode 9 opens with an absolutely brutal flashback scenes. One of those scenes that really reminds you that yes, this show was not intended for children. A group of barbarians who we come to learn are the Herd of Storm, Grog's old group, led by his uncle Kevdak, wielder of the Titanstone Knuckles, brutally murder and pillage this town. The scene ending as we see a young Grog Strongjaw going on a murder spree. Throughout this episode, we see a bit more of Grog's past as he tells his story to Pike. Grog was not always this kind, lovable, big-hearted giant that we know him to be. At one point, he was a cold-blooded killing machine that cut down anything in his path. But this all changed the day he met Pike's grandfather, Wilhelm. This moment forever changed Grog, as it seems that up until this point, he had not valued life at all. But seeing an older, defenseless man beg for his life, and seeing the image of a young Pike in his necklace, knowing that this man had family that he genuinely cared for, Grog could no longer stand by and murder innocents. He helps Wilhelm escape the raid, attacking his own cousin Zanrir in the process. Ultimately, Grog would be forced to face his uncle Kevdak, as he would be caught helping Wilhelm escape. Grog would put up a good fight, but he was young and rash and genuinely stood no match for Kevdak and his vestiges of the Divergence, the man brutally beating Grog to an inch of his life, leaving him for dead, banished from the tribe. He would later be saved, though, by a young Pike and her grandfather, and from here, Grog's story would never be the same again. Fun fact, Pike's hair is actually dark here because this was her original hair color before her hair turns to white in a Tokyo Ghoul-esque style after she dies early on in Campaign 1. Now, you see in these episodes, we see Grog come face to face with his uncle in his past once more, something that he is genuinely scared to do. I remember watching these episodes years ago in the campaign and being so intrigued by Kevdak as a character, as this was one of the first times that an enemy seemed to truly scare Grog. And now in the animated show, he must face him once again, but this time without his muscles or his strength. Something that for the majority of episode 9, we see that Grog is genuinely terrified to do, wanting to do anything else but venture into the city of Westron and face his former family. After helping Scanlan rescue a group of Westron citizens, one who happens to be Scanlan's long-lost daughter Kaylee, Grog turns around, declaring that he is not leaving the city. Pike tells him that he has a death wish facing Kevdak. Grog responds, saying if he leaves now, then he really is as weak as Kevdek always said he was. Hitting hard and being big aren't what make you strong. It's standing up for the little folk. It's what makes me different to them, as Grog boldly strides forward, challenging his uncle to a duel as our episode ends. Legend of Vox Machina has this way to tell these real human stories in such a beautiful way that I feel like Campaign 1 never really could. Not saying that one is necessarily better than the other, but the way that Legend of Vox Machina hones in on these human stories that our characters face is absolutely beautiful, man. While the story is ultimately the epic tale of an adventuring party hunting down legendary weapons to slay a cabal of ancient evil dragons and save their world, but for me, the more compelling story that is being told here in Legend of Vox Machina is the human one. The story elements that each character faces on their journey and how it shapes them as people, and how we see a ragtag group of misfits and outcasts transform themselves, facing their inner demons, and slowly turn into real life heroes that lead and inspire. Legend of Vox Machina continues to absolutely blow my expectations away for this animated series, and I genuinely can't wait to see what we have in store for us in the next set of episodes. As always, if you enjoyed the video or learned something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out some of our other Legend of Vox Machina and Critical Role content. I am very tired, guys. Thank you always for joining me for this video. I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace, love, adu.
A love story that might be. We wasn't supposed to happen. So much talk around us. We became numb to the yapping. It was like 05. Got my license to drive. Picked you up in my pop's car. Went for a ride. Couldn't no one tell us nothing. That night was ours. All the stars aligned and you were so damn fine. Yeah, it was young.